Genesis chapter 9, the case of Noah's nakedness. Okay? I'll have some verses to read. Go to Genesis chapter 9, verse 18 up to 29. Genesis chapter 9, verse 18 up to 29. I'll read. And the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth. And Ham is the father of Canaan. These are the three sons of Noah. And of them was the whole earth overspread. And Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine, and was drunken, and was uncovered within his tent. And Ham the father of Canaan saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment, and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backward, and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan. A servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Verse 27, God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. So this is a story which is familiar to many of us, but I don't think, sometimes there are things in the Bible people fear, especially in the Old Testament. The story can be so bizarre, you just run away from it, read it and take off quickly. But it seems very cruel. Now, if you read it in the basic English translation like I read, here's a case. It seems like Noah planted a vineyard. He had 3 sons after the flood. He got drunk. While he slept, the basic English you can think, his son came in, found him naked, looked at him, maybe laughed, went back to his brother. There, I saw daddy naked. So the father wakes up naked and ends up cursing Canaan. Canaan, not Ham. But that seems very harsh. I mean, you curse your son because he just saw you naked? It doesn't make sense. There's a scholar who says that if it's weird, it's important. He said if something in the Bible is weird, then it's important. But many times, if it's weird, you run away from it. Anyway, how can a father be that angry that because the son saw him naked, he decided to just curse his child? But then also the other ones who covered him, what chances there that they didn't see him naked? But also, if I continue on in the Bible or in the scriptures, there is no such law whereby a father should curse his son because he saw him naked. So this is where now your antennas go on and you say, you know what? I need to first go back to that audience. How did they read this text? How did they understand this text? So, we are dealing with a phrase called the nakedness of his father. The nakedness of his father. Now, you're going to find that that phrase is actually an idiomatic expression. Now, we all know when you're dealing with an idiom, you don't interpret an idiom by the individual words that make it up. I'll give you an example. We have some common idioms in English, like break a leg. They say, break a leg. I mean, if you start to get people's legs and breaking them, but if you break up the individual words, break a leg, it means to break a leg. But actually, it's an expression commonly used in theater if you're going on stage and they're just telling you good luck. Okay? What about a popular one which is very applicable in Kampala even today? It was raining cats and dogs. Imagine that. It was raining cats and dogs. But if cats and dogs were falling from the sky, would run away. So this idiomatic expression, if you just keep reading the Bible, you'll find it there. Okay? So let's try to look through it. In Leviticus chapter 20 verse 17, Leviticus chapter 20 verse 17, the Bible interprets itself. The Bible interprets itself. Leviticus 20:17 says, if a man takes his sister, a daughter of his father, or a daughter of his mother, and sees her nakedness, and she sees his nakedness, it is a disgrace, and they shall be cut off in the sight of the children of their people. Why? He has uncovered his sister's nakedness, and he shall bear his iniquity. Okay? What's with that? If you back up 2 chapters, there is a whole big passage elaborating on this. Leviticus 18, verse 6. You can read verse 6 to 19, but I'm going to read only up to verse 8. But you're going to see all the others they speak about. Leviticus chapter 18, verse 6. It says, none of you shall approach any one of his close relatives to uncover nakedness. I am the Lord. None of you shall approach any of his close relatives to uncover nakedness. I am the Lord. Verse 7. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father. Which is the nakedness of your mother? She is your mother. You shall not uncover her nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife. It is your father's nakedness. So the context is actually sexual. Let's read on. If you go a little bit further in the prophets, Ezekiel 16. Ezekiel 16 verse 35 to 37. Ezekiel 16, 35 to 37. Therefore, O prostitute, hear the word of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord God, because your lust was poured out, and your nakedness uncovered in your whorings with your lovers, and with all your abominable idols, and because of the blood of your children that you gave to them, therefore, behold, I will gather all your lovers with whom you took pleasure, all those you loved and all those you hated. I will gather them against you from every side, and will uncover your nakedness to them, that they may see all your nakedness. Whoring, sexual. Okay? So this phrase, uncovering of nakedness, has to do with some kind of sexual sin, or some kind of sexual, implication. Now, so if we go back to our text in the case of Noah, so if Ham uncovered his father's nakedness, so some will say, was that a case of homosexuality? Because now we have already, I think everybody now understands we are not dealing with a case of Ham just stumbling into his father before he puts on his clothes. We can tell that it is a case of sexual related. So, was it homosexuality? I don't think it was homosexuality. Go back to that Leviticus chapter 18 again and say this. Leviticus 18, the 8th verse specifically says, you shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife. It is your father's nakedness. Now, in that Leviticus, he distinguished the one of your mother and also your father's wife. Because you are aware in that culture, or in that time, men usually had wives and concubines. Okay? So he says, Leviticus 18:8, you shall not uncover the nakedness of your father, or you shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife. It's your father's nakedness. Okay? So, the nakedness of Noah is the nakedness of Noah's wife in this text. And it's going to make sense in a moment. Why do I go with that? So what Ham did was to have sex with his stepmom. Okay? That's what is referred to there as him uncovering his father's nakedness. Because his father's wife's nakedness is his father's nakedness. Yes, you're with me. But when somebody said, but it was Noah's tent. It was Noah's tent. Well, that does not make it a difference. For instance, remember, again, this is how the culture that they were in was patriarchal. And the culture was patriarchal. Also, the communication had a patriarchal slide to it. That's why sometimes you see a lot of he, men, and so on and so forth. It's not because God is anti-women, but sometimes, like I told you, because the human element is there, the cultural element is there, in the communication and the writing of the Bible, God does not take it away. It also comes through in their writings. So his tent has nothing to do with gender. I'll give you an example. Genesis chapter 24 verse 67. Genesis 24 verse 67 about this tent issue. Genesis 24 verse 67. It says, then Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah, his mother, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Okay? So this it could have also been Sarah's tent. So Sarah's tent, you may even find they're calling it sometimes Abraham's tent. You get it? And the mother was dead at the time. Okay? But also you are dealing even here with a situation of something intimate. Why again will I say that this is a case of sexual perversion whereby a man or a son, in this case Ham, had his father's wife? The writer specifically emphasizes certain things. I'll tell you for instance. In Genesis chapter 9 verse 18, when he's beginning that narrative, he says this. The sons of Noah that went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And then the writer puts an addendum, and Ham is the father of Canaan. Why? Didn't the others have children? Now, so look at the curse. Yeah, you're getting there. In verse 24, Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, cursed be Canaan. He didn't say cursed be Ham. Cursed be Canaan. He shall be a servant. And he continued it in verse 27. God enlarged Japheth. He shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Canaan, you can see, I believe that Canaan was a fruit of that incest. That's not the best part. So, in the narrative, they deliberately put Canaan for you, even though he was not a son of Noah. But they just want to highlight something. So why the emphasis? Why? Well, the book of Genesis is the seed. Book of Genesis is predominantly seed. Sometimes it's actually called the seed. I mean, Genesis means beginning. A seed is a beginning. The book of Genesis carefully follows the seed. Genesis 3:15, the seed of a woman, seed of the serpent, something we spoke about. Now, what did Ham do exactly? What Ham did in that world was actually him trying to exercise dominion over his father. He was hijacking the lineage. It was like a coup d'etat. It was an attempt to seize the father's household. Now, don't forget, the beginning of Genesis chapter 9 actually, it speaks about the blessing. Now, the blessing, the same blessing that you see in Genesis chapter 1, 26 to 28. Genesis chapter 9, 1, God blessed Noah and his sons and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Now, in that culture, there was something called the right of the firstborn, where it would be the office, and that blessing was passed on from generation to generation. Now, let me just go back a little bit. I've gone into my conclusion. Let me just back up a bit. So, Ham is trying to usurp the order. Okay? And he's attempting to seize the heir of his father's household. Okay? In their culture, or in that Asian Near Eastern culture, and I'm going to show you some examples. You take people's wives to show them you have defeated them. I'll give you an example. Reuben was the son of Jacob. Genesis chapter 35 verse 22. Genesis 35, 22. This is what Reuben did. And Reuben was also the firstborn of? Reuben was the firstborn of Jacob or Israel. Genesis 35, 22. While Israel lived in that land, Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine. And Israel heard of it. Now, he kept him. Like we say, Namtedeka. In Genesis chapter 49, when he's speaking of his children, verse 3, you hear what he said about Reuben. This is later before Israel dies. Genesis 49 verse 3 and 4. Reuben, you are my firstborn. Okay? My might and the first fruits of my strength. Preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power. Verse 4. And stable as water. You shall not have preeminence, because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. You went up to my couch. So, according to culture, he had to have the right of the firstborn, because he was the first child. The father acknowledges it. But, he said, however, you shall not have preeminence, because you defiled your father's bed. So, because he went into his father's concubine. And you know that the lot now fell on Judah. There are more. When David overtook Saul, who was like his father, in the lamentation of the prophet Nathan, 2 Samuel chapter 12 verse 8. Listen to this. 2 Samuel chapter 12 verse 8. I gave you your master's house, your master's wives into your arms, and gave you the house of Israel and Judah. And if this were too little, I would add you as much. I would add to you as much more. So David, when he took over Saul, he took Saul's concubines. It is culture. Now, this is not even God endorsing, but this is what is happening in the culture at that time. And this is what I'm saying. So you don't divorce the culture also from the word of God. Now, somebody may read this and say, well, it is right to do because it is in the Bible. No. This was their culture at that time. So God accommodated but doesn't endorse it. The same thing happened to David when his son Absalom ousted him. Absalom also did a coup d'etat. 2 Samuel chapter 16 verse 20 to 22. 2 Samuel chapter 16 verse 20 to 22. Then Absalom said to Ahithophel, give your counsel. What shall we do? Ahithophel said to Absalom, go into your father's concubines, whom he has left to keep his house, and all Israel will hear that you have made yourself a stench to your father, and the hands of all who are with you will be strengthened. So they pitched a tent for Absalom on the roof, and Absalom went into his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. So now, does it make sense? If you go back to Noah, this is what Ham is indirectly trying to do. And he told his brothers. The father found out what he was trying to do. So, what did he do? He cast the seed. He cast the fruit of that illegitimate propagation of the lineage. Now remember, the language of blessing and cursing is the language of Genesis and the language of the Bible. Blessing, you carry on the office, you carry on the right, you carry on the mandate. If you don't have it, if it wasn't passed to them, then it was a curse. So, God had blessed Mr. Noah, and this blessing is supposed to go to the seed. So, Ham tries to hijack it by going into his father's, I believe his father's concubine. And guess what? The father learns of it. He had uncovered his father's nakedness. So that's the essence of uncovering the father's nakedness. So he's saying, this illegitimate seed will not carry this office, will not carry this blessing.